Good evening. I'm Jean Harris, and I'm the moderator for this evening's event. This debate is sponsored by the Lackawanna County League of Women Voters, the University of Scranton's Political Science Department, the College Democrats here at the University of Scranton, and the College Republicans. This event is being taped by Electric City TV, and it will be replayed on ECTV and also will be available on the League's website, which you can find at www.lwvlackawanna.org. Next week, on Wednesday, November 2nd, there'll be a debate for the candidates running for the 3 Lackawanna County Commissioner positions. The debate will begin at 7 o'clock here in the Moskowitz Theater at the University of Scranton. The League has also interviewed candidates for several other city and county elected offices, and those interviews can be viewed on ECTV and on the League's website as well. In addition to the debates and the interviews, the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County is sponsoring an online voter's guide through vote411.org. The League invited candidates in city, county, and judicial races to provide some biographic data and answer some questions on vote411.org. And you can go onto that website starting in the next day or so and get that information as well on the local candidates. The League's sponsorship of vote411.org does cost money, and so do the debates and interviews that we're doing and that are being shown. And so we are always very happy to take donations from those of you who support the work of the League. And at the end, there'll be some students with baskets if you decide you want to support the League's efforts. Please do shut off your phones, or at least put them on vibrate if you have not already done that, which I just remembered to do. The candidates are seated alphabetically, and they have to share a microphone because one of the microphones was giving us a problem, so I apologize for that. Each candidate will get all the same questions. None of the candidates have had the questions in advance, so they're new questions for the candidates. They'll be allowed, during the process of the debate, 3 opportunities to ask for a rebuttal, a 1-minute rebuttal. And so after all candidates have answered a question, if a candidate wants to clarify or add something, he can ask for a rebuttal, and it will be a 1-minute rebuttal. Rationale for the questions. The League of Women Voters believes that democratic government depends upon the informed and active participation of citizens. Democratic government requires that government bodies protect the citizens' rights to know, the right to adequate notice of proposed actions, to hold open meetings, and making public records accessible. In addition, the League believes that responsible government should be responsive to the will of the people. It requires integrity and accountability. This evening, we've got 3 candidates for Scranton City Council. Jack Luscombe, who is on the ballot as both a Democrat and a Republican. Bob McGuff, who's on the ballot as a Democrat, and Lee Morgan. The first question pertains to why these individuals are running for office. The position of city council member is technically a part-time position. Yet, to do the job well, council members must put in many more hours than the norm for a part-time position. The question is, why are you running for the part-time position, and how will you find the time required to do it well? And this is a 1-minute response, and we're going to start with Lee Morgan.
The reason I'm running for council is because I've spent over 20 years there watching the council meetings and participating, and I've watched multiple councils get elected, and we just seem to be sinking further and further in debt. We seem to have councilmen who don't pay attention to the home rule charter, and we seem to be losing the city. I grew up here, there were 100,000 people, we're down to 70, and I just think there's too much politics in that chamber, and I think it's time to recognize people as being important and start moving legislation through council that is not political and serves the public.
Thank you. Jack.
Excuse me. I'm running for a full term on council. I was appointed to fill a vacancy left by the election of Bill Courtwright less than 2 years ago. And in the past 2 years, I think part of the question was, it's a part-time job, do we have the time also? And I am retired, however, I do dabble in insurance and a few other things, so I do have flexible time. And a lot of the issues that have been addressed this year, I physically go just about every day and meet with people on a regular basis, try to get to as many neighborhood meetings as possible to see what's going on. And I always ask people who approach me in the drugstores or grocery stores to just let me know what their problems are, and that's how we find out. But I enjoyed doing the job this past 2 years, and I look forward to another 4.
Thank you. Bob McGuff?
The city of Scranton needs people who are willing to work together to resolve the issues that face our city. That's been my goal as a member of City Council for the past 5 years, and will continue to be my goal if reelected. The interests of the cities have to be paramount, and not the political or personal agendas of the people that are involved. Respect and common sense, I believe, are what I brought to the decision-making process, and also the optimism that Scranton can succeed if, in fact, we work together towards that goal. And I think in the past 5 years, I have demonstrated that I do have the time to perform the duties of City Council as a retired teacher. I have attempted to spend as much time as possible being a councilman.
Thank you. The second question deals with the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you have for the position. You are asking Scranton voters to hire you to make policy for them and to monitor the city departments and offices as they implement policy and provide services. Please tell us about what knowledge, skills, and abilities you have that make you the right hire for the voters of Scranton. And note that I am asking about knowledge, skills, and abilities, not experience, which will be covered in the next question. So specifically, what knowledge, skills, and abilities do you have and will you bring to the position? And we're going to start with Jack.
Excuse me. Okay, knowledge, skills, and abilities. Basically, I've picked up quite a bit of knowledge on the position this past 2 years, but my abilities, I think, have proven themselves at the meetings. My education is in architectural, construction, insurance issues, and one of the big issues facing our city today is public safety. And I am a retired captain from the Scranton Fire Department, and I worked at a time when we also had the ambulance service in the fire department. That's a big issue today, especially with cutbacks, and I think that's a big factor, along with the rest of my background. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob McGuff?
I think as a former teacher, one of the things that you develop is the ability to deal with the wide variety of people and a wide variety of ideas and issues. I think that one of the skills that I developed as a teacher is that ability to try and build consensus with people, to try and work with people towards a common goal. Also, in the past 5 years as council person, I think I have developed some abilities for dealing with the intricacies of city government and some of the ways in which government operates, and hopefully I can continue to do that.
Thank you. Lee?
The first thing I have here is knowledge. I think I've gained a lot of knowledge over 20 years participating in public meetings as a council. I think it's really a wealth of knowledge to consider all the mistakes the council's made over this period of time. As far as skills are concerned, I think the most important skill that a candidate can possess is the skill to hear the residents and what they're asking for. I think that skill is lacking in council, and I think it's been lacking a long time. And my ability is my persistence to continue participating in a system where I think the average Scrantonian is completely disenfranchised from his government, and it's a government that's borrowed vast quantities of money and has taken the city residents for granted as the population has dropped from 100,000 now down to 70, and there's a mass exodus from this city.
Thank you. This is the last of our just 1-minute response questions, and this one is specific about your relevant experience for this position. Can you cite any relevant experience, for example, governmental, managerial, fiscal, or consensus building experience, that you will bring to the job to make you a successful council member? Please be as specific as possible. And we're starting this one with Bob.
I think the most prominent experience that I have is actually being council person. It does take some learning. It does take some adaptation in order to perform the duties of city council. It is something that requires working with other people, and as I said before, is one of the things that I believe I have experience in is dealing with the ability to bring consensus to issues. Also, experience. I taught civics and government and American history for 35 years, so I do have a little bit of knowledge of, the process of government, and that has helped over the course of the past 5 years.
Thank you. Lee?
Well, my experience, other than going to council meetings, is that at one time I worked in a company in a capacity as a spray painter and was promoted to a supervisor working under the president of the company, which was preparing to go bankrupt. I learned a lot of very important lessons in listening to the people that worked with me, because in the end, the company was saved, the employees were saved, and the company became profitable. And I think the most important thing is the ability to listen to others, to not have all the answers, because there's a lot of people that have opinions that are very valid. And I think the most important experience you learn in life is that if you want to succeed, you have to listen to other people's opinions other than your own, and you don't always have all the answers, and you can't shut people out.
Thank you. Jack?
My experience, as Mr. McGough said, part of the experience has been our time on city council, learning what more of the issues are from the inside. I've had a lot of experience in the public sector, as I said, as a firefighter and an EMT on the ambulance, making quick decisions and dealing with people on a day-to-day basis. At one time, I was a coordinator of architectural development at Mount Airy Lodge, coordinating between the planning committees and design and stuff like that. So I have the background with the architectural and construction in the city, which we deal with our inspection departments, and also the insurance background. So there's a lot of that ability that I think comes into play that would benefit the citizens of Scranton.
Thank you. Question number 4. This is about the budgeting process in the city, and we'll have 2-minute time for responses on this question. Scranton's deficit is a product of structural and cyclical problems. According to Standard & Poor's credit analyst Linda Yip, Standard & Poor's downgraded the city's credit rating because of its concern over the, quote, large structural deficits facing the city at the end of fiscal year 2011 and the city's constrained ability to address budgetary pressures, especially given the political discord. So the question is, what can you suggest that will stop city officials from this pattern of approving budgets with structural deficits? And we'll start with Mr. Morgan.
I think the city's budget problems are very easily solved if council would use its power subpoena given to it in the Home Rule Charter as a budget oversight. I think no council has ever done that. I think that if you want to find out where the money is, you have to ask the relevant department heads and the mayor under power of subpoena what's happening. I think a subpoena makes them be honest and truthful, but you have to know what to ask for. And I just think that when you don't use the charter to empower people and find out where our money's going, you end up with the problems we have now. We end up with authorities that are bankrupt and still functioning. We end up with a council that blames everybody else for what's happening in the city other than their inability to use the Home Rule Charter to protect the citizens. And I just think it turns into a situation where we have the gridlock where the administration and the council are fighting amongst themselves, and they really don't want an answer to the question. And if we're ever going to get it, we have to use the court's leverage with subpoena, not in a criminal content, but in a fiscal watchdog capacity to turn this city around. And I think there's been a lack of determination and willingness on the part of not this council, but councils for over 50 years to use the powers at their disposal to turn this city around and blame everybody else other than themselves for where we are.
Thank you. Mr. Luscombe?
Well, part of the big problem with the budget this year, and I think it's been well documented, is that the information that was passed to City Council to form their budget neglected to inform City Council, or even in the administration's budget, that there was over $5 million that paid last year's bills. So we started right out with that deficit. Also, there were many items that were included in Council's budget to generate revenue. The budget was not followed. Only certain parts of it were followed. So inherently, we were headed from day one, which I feel was a sabotaged budget, to have a deficit this year. We have to work together. The mayor has to sit down with us, and I'd like to do it in a public forum because I don't like backroom deals. Anything could be said. This way, in a forum like this, we could get together, and the mayor is the head of this city, and he should sit down with us and speak to us one-on-one. We're not saying members of the audience will be questioning him. It will be one-on-one with City Council, and we could work on it together. But I think that would definitely be a benefit to everyone in this city. You know, it's no secret as to what's going on. And as far as subpoena powers aren't to be used at every click of your finger. There are certain situations where you could use the subpoena powers, but we do have to get a full-fledged investigation going before we have the ability to do that. They didn't make it as easy as it sounds for us to utilize that. Thank you.
Mr. McGough?
The only way in which the budget process is going to work is through the cooperation of council and the mayor. That did not happen last year. The mayor didn't cooperate with council. Council didn't cooperate with the mayor. Mr. Luscombe mentions that information that council received was faulty. Council never went to the mayor to find the information. Council tried to produce a budget on its own. The mayor never went to council to find out ideas that they had. And so the process simply became dysfunctional. It was one party trying to best the other without offering any cooperation to one another. And we don't need the courts to settle the issues of the city. I think that we've turned to the courts too often to let non-elected people operate the city. The budget process will work if people are willing to put aside personalities, personal animosities, political agendas, and simply sit down. There doesn't have to be qualifications. It doesn't have to be the mayor going to council. It doesn't have to be the council going to the mayor. It simply has to be people willing to talk to one another, wherever the venue may be. We have set up too many stipulations on how this process is going to take place. We have to knock down these barriers, and we just have to get into the process itself, and it will work.
Could I, after Mr. Luscombe, I think he raised his hand first, Buttle.
Okay, yes. First Jack and then Lee for a 1-minute rebuttal.
Basically, we have a finance chairman who did approach the mayor. He actually sat down with the business administrator and did get the information. All the information was requested, and it was not provided. That's a big dent, over $5 million to not be provided. And also, the audit problem. The administration is failing to provide the auditor with the information that's required. We still don't have the audit information for 2010. How are we supposed to form a new budget? That's part of the problem. So we could say we could work together, which we're willing to do, but we can't work together if the information isn't provided. And the mayor is welcome to sit with me or anybody here again and get any other information he requires from us. We've always had an open door in the city clerk's office. But without the proper information, we cannot formulate a proper budget, and that's where the problem is.
Thank you. Lee?
You know, I'd like to go back to what Mr. Lascom just said, because that's why the power of subpoena is so necessary at this time. There's no cooperation between the mayor and the administration from what he alleges, Mr. Lascom alleges. And to be truthfully honest with you, you can't put a budget together without facts. And if you can't get them, then you have to have the court intervene, because we have to protect the 70,000 residents in this city who are losing their fire and police protection. The council has, and the government itself has played politics for too long, and now we're suffering. And it's time for the people to step up to the plate and make demands of change. And the change has to be that if council has the power of subpoena to protect the residents, it has to happen. That's what the courts are for. They're to protect individuals in certain circumstances, and these residents need answers. You can't make a budget without answers. And everybody's allegedly not telling the truth. Well, that's how you get the answers. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to have a couple of budget-related questions here in a row. So, the cycle of economic ups and downs, which city officials cannot control, are also challenges to the city's ability to end the year with a balanced budget. So the question is, what can you suggest to prepare the city to cope with fiscal stress caused by these economic cycles? I'm sorry, and we're going to start with Jack Luscombe.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat the last part?
Sure. So I'll repeat the whole question. The cycle of economic ups and downs, which city officials cannot control, also challenges the city government's ability to end the year with a balanced budget. What can you suggest to prepare the city to cope with the fiscal stress caused by economic cycles?
Well, for years, you know, the city has been the benefactor of federal programs, state programs, and as we know, that's dried up all the way. There's really no surefire answer. We have to tighten our belts, as we've been trying to do. We have to look at innovative ways of generating revenue to help offset a lot of the costs without coming out of the taxpayers' pockets. The past 2 years, we have suggested several items that would generate revenue and help offset some of the deficit. But of course, a lot of it was not followed at this point. But we do have to get a little bit stronger with that, and that's the only way we're going to pull ourselves out. But we have to think innovatively and again, tighten our belts. We don't have the handouts from the government anymore. We have to rely on ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McGough?
I would obviously agree with Mr. Lascombe. The first thing is to look at revenue sources, new revenue sources. The tax structure as it currently exists will not support the rising cost of city government, especially healthcare costs, which are rising exponentially. The tax structure simply can't keep pace. So we need to look to new sources of revenue. There are some available. There are suggestions that have been made by council, by the mayor. The other thing is to control spending. The biggest expenditure that the city has is personnel. The question becomes, what are the limits, or what is the balance that you need between what you're spending and what you need in terms of city personnel? And that becomes very difficult. You can't, if you start cutting people, you are going to automatically cut services, and that's what people pay taxes for, are for services. So what we really need to do is these, as you said, these business cycles occur, is to just try and keep pace with the costs that we have, especially personnel costs, and also look at making the most of the revenue sources that do exist.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan?
Well, I'd just like to say that I really don't think that the city is experiencing fiscal debt stress in the way that the commentator might believe. I just think it's a total lack of employment here. And I think there's been a lack of business development here. And I think that the Scranton-Abington Planning Association put together an excellent comprehensive plan to move a lot of jobs and industry into this city. And it rides on the back of clean and green, which the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has used in the rural areas for a very long time. I think what we've done over an extended period of time is we've overtaxed the residents to the point where they're fleeing to Taylor and Old Forge and anywhere but here. And I've hit a lot of doors in this community, and they're telling me that. And I think what we really need to do is we need to step back, find an economic engine, team with the Scranton Chamber of Commerce, which I don't think are villains, and start building an infrastructure of employment here and change direction, because we keep looking for revenue, and all we keep doing is we keep chasing people away. Our children aren't staying here, our grandchildren aren't staying here, and we need to find answers, and they're not based in raising revenue and more new enhanced methods of taxation. And I think that the answers are there, but I think that we're losing our fire and police protection, and we're losing a lot of services. The city still comprises 26 square miles, and we've allowed politics to take us where we are, and I think it's time for the residents to come forward and demand a comprehensive plan like the Scranton-Abington Planning Association's plan, in conjunction with hoping that the Scranton Chamber of Commerce will step on board and the Commonwealth and start to build an economic engine. We lack jobs and opportunity here. We have plenty of taxes. We need to go in a new direction.
Thank you. This next question is about the current city's budget, the fiscal year 2011 budget deficit specifically. Please describe some specific solutions to resolve the more than $6 million projected budget deficit for the city's current budget. I'll warn you that cutting wasteful spending is not a specific solution and therefore not an acceptable answer. And please only address the 2011 budget, because we'll have another question about the 2012 budget that's coming up. And we're going to start this round with Bob.
A number of proposals have already been made to deal with the budget. The mayor has proposed a sale of parking meters and a borrowing program, which we have looked at, which has been considered. It hasn't been put onto the agenda as yet to vote on. Is it a good solution? I'm not sure. Council has proposed a leasing of parking meters to offset or to offset the deficit. Again, is it a possible? It was proposed. It's going to need the cooperation of the banking industry and some other things in order for it to be implemented. Pell has suggested borrowing through, no, I'm losing the term, I'm sorry, but has suggested borrowing over a 10-year period to cover it, court-approved borrowing. All of these are possibilities. There may be others that exist, but whatever the solution is, it's going to take a cooperative effort between the administration and the council to come to something that's agreeable and can be implemented and work. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee?
Well, I only have to say on that issue that we've used all the one-time funding sources that I can imagine. And the truth of the matter is, I think we have to do what I've stated over a decade. I think we have to go to the budget line item by line item, find out where the money's going, find out what accounts are dormant and where there's money laying in them, whether it's $200,000 or $50,000, and we have to redirect that money to where it has to go. I don't think that people in this community can take any more tax increases. When you knock on people's doors and they tell you, and look, it's not just seniors either, it's everybody, and they tell you that they're reverse mortgaging their homes because they have no money left, and we're going to debate how we're going to correct the 2011 and 2012 taxes, a budget. Look, it's real easy. You got to find out where the money's going, and you've got to make changes. And arguing back and forth between the administration and the council hasn't taken us anywhere, and we've been borrowing money for decades.
Thank you. Jack?
As far as the $6 million stated deficit for 2011, as Mr. McGough said, there were different ideas floated around between the administration and City Council. The administration's idea was to sell the parking meters to the parking authority and some unfunded borrowing and some additional items. But City Council would like to protect our assets. Since the meters belong to the city, we could borrow against the meters and utilize that money to offset the debt. And we still have the income from those meters down the line in the future. We're not getting rid of them as a one-time source of income. They will continue to bring money into the city in perpetuity as long as we maintain them. I think that's the better alternative at this time, but there are several solutions to look at, and we do have to have an appraisal on them to see what the whole program is worth at this point, which we've requested from the administration. But I believe not selling an asset is a big key, because down the road, we're going to have a big hole to fill because of the loss of revenue from our meters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just,
A rebuttal?
please.
Sure.
Not necessarily a rebuttal, just
Well, if you're going to say anything more, it's a rebuttal.
okay.
Go for it.
Rebuttal.
Okay.
None of the solutions that have been presented are good ones. I think we might all agree on that. They're all going to require some hardship or bring some hardship to the city. As far as selling the parking meters, I agree. I would have to agree that, you know, giving up an asset is not necessarily a good idea. The leasing of the parking meters that was suggested could bring about the dissolution of the parking authority, which would mean the assumption of somewhere around $50 million worth of debt by the city. So that doesn't necessarily bring about, you know, a good resolution. And the unfunded borrowing, again, we're adding to a debt that we already have. Is that a good solution? Maybe not. So what we're going to have to do is to decide which is the lesser of evils.
Thank you. Now we're going to take a look at the 2012 budget, the budget that hasn't yet been proposed. Please describe some specific solutions to resolve the predicted $11 million budget deficit for the city's 2012 budget. And again, I'll warn you, just saying cutting wasteful spending isn't going to be good enough, nor is just raising more revenue a good enough answer. We want to be more specific than that. And on this question, we're going to start with Mr. Morgan.
Okay, well, my answer is pretty much basically the same as the last one. I think it's time to go to the budget line item by line item, find out where the money is. It's real simple. And the other thing is that if we can't find the savings we need by doing that, then we need to do across-the-board cuts till we get to $11 million, because the city just is in no position to borrow more money. Our bond rating is failing. Our residents are leaving the area, and there's just no money. So you know what? You don't borrow money when you can't pay your bills. You tighten your belt, you do what you have to do, and maybe you have to take some heat for it. But you know what? The residents in the city stopped voting a long time ago and stopped paying attention. And that's where we are now. They thought somebody else was going to come and save them and solve all their problems. They went into the ballot box and just voted a recovery plan that wasn't real. I talked about it a long time ago at council meetings. And you know what? It's time now to face the facts that the city's in very, very serious trouble. The PEL was never sent here to bail us out, and they've done a terrible job. Councils and the mayor have borrowed a lot of money. Well, you know what? The council had oversight to make sure that they didn't put the residents in jeopardy, and they did. And the council also had the power subpoena to find out where the money was, and they didn't use it. And that's why I think that, you know, sitting here talking complete, utter silliness about how you're going to change this without realizing that we can't borrow any more money. We sold the Southside Sports Complex, University of Scranton, for almost nothing. The municipal golf course, we got money for that, but it was giving the city $200,000 a year, and we sold that asset. We've been selling everything and anything, and we've been leasing stuff out. We leased the Scranton Sewer Authority out when Mayor Connors was mayor, and the fiasco cost us millions of dollars. It's time to face the facts that we have to try something new and not keep going back to the same failed tactics, thinking that the scenario is going to change by doing it all over again.
Thank you. Jack?
As always, every year, we have to look to tighten our belts in certain areas. I do believe we go over line item by line item and each year and try and to cut where we can. And but I think the bleeding has to stop in the employment end of the city. We're cut to the bone right now. I mean, safety is at a risk. One of the things the taxpayers are paying for is to have their garbage picked up, their fires put out, their police protection, and someone answer the phone when they call City Hall. I mean, that's the places they keep cutting. But again, like I said before, we got used to the federal government and the state government coming to bail us out all these years, and we don't have that anymore. Like I said before, too, we have to become innovative. We have to seek revenue sources, not one-time revenue sources. Something that's not going to be a tax on everyone. And some of the issues that have been floated have been payroll taxes, commuter taxes, and some other ideas like that. Again, the street meter system, our rental registration program, and that's not necessarily a revenue system, but it's a program that's going to try and help us stop the blight too. Because that's a big user of the public services also. You have problem tenants, you utilize the police department on a regular basis, the fire department on a pretty regular basis, and our inspectors. So that's become a big user of our services. So that's why we have to look at that to clean up our blight and to protect our citizens. But those are just some of the ideas. There's going to be many more. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
Thank you. It's tough going last because all of the items are already mentioned here. I know that, from Mr. Loscom and I have worked somewhat on the rental registration program. Will it, a revenue source that not going to solve all of the problems, but it's an addition. He mentioned the parking revenues. I've been in favor of any type of enhancement of the parking to enhance parking revenues. I think that's a good idea. Payroll tax, interesting idea that I think is one that we really should look at. That's a tax on overall payroll rather than individuals. It's a tax on the business itself and its net payroll, or its gross payroll, I'm sorry. May work. May increase some revenues. Amusement tax has been mentioned. Problem is we don't necessarily have a large arena or anything that generates revenue, and therefore amusement tax, while it may be somewhat successful, not as good as if we had the arena or something in the area. I think the most obvious answer is that we're going to be looking at possibility of layoffs, reasonable layoffs, and it doesn't have to be public safety, which is going to result in maybe a diminishing of services. I think we're going to be looking at possibility of raising taxes, which nobody wants to hear, but it becomes a reality when faced with these problems. So there are some things that are going to be done, have to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. No one suggested that Harrisburg or the state government take over the city as a solution, and so I'm going to ask about that. The city has been classified as a distressed city for a long time now, since 1992, and the situation does not appear to be improving. So the question is, would you support the state government taking over the governing of the city of Scranton, as it is moving to do currently in Harrisburg? Don't just say yes or no, but please explain your answer. And this time we're going to start with Jack.
I'm glad you could keep track.
I have a sheet.
Yes, no, I won't. No, I don't believe that we should look towards a takeover from Harrisburg. I do believe that we still have the ability to work together and work out our problems. I think Harrisburg has been in a far tighter stalemate, and I believe it was a $113 million incinerator project that has really buried them. we do have heavy debt, we do have problems. I don't think we have them to that magnitude. I do believe, you know, whether we all agree or disagree on city council at times, that we want to drive this city back and keep it to ourselves, to yourselves. I don't think you need the state telling you what to do. I think we do have the ability, with the personnel we have, to work together. And hopefully, this might put a scare into to everyone, our part and the administrative part, to work a little harder together and open up the lines of communications so we're not subject to a state takeover. I don't think that would be a good solution for any of us.
Thank you. Bob?
The state takeover of Harrisburg, from my understanding, was a result of a dysfunctional city government and the belief that it could not solve the problems that Harrisburg had. I think we're moving toward that in the city of Scranton. And I think that a takeover of city government would be the absolute worst thing that could happen. People do not vote for, people vote for their officials in the city. We are the ones that should be solving the problems that face the city and not turning it over to the state or any other functionary. I think that if we are going to survive and we are going to remain independent of that type of, I'll say, martial law almost that, you know, has been imposed on Harrisburg, it's going to take a change in attitude by the administration, by the council, by all areas of government, and also a change in attitude maybe by the electorate to get out and force their elected officials to do the job that they were elected to do. And I mean that for all elected officials, and I'll include myself. I think it's now incumbent upon the citizens of Scranton to get out and tell the mayor, tell the council, tell all elected officials what they should be doing, and to do the job that they were elected to do.
Thank you. Lee?
Well, the first thing I have here is that, you know, I'm in agreement with Mr. McGough on this point, that it's about time for the residents of this city to come out, voice their opinions in mass, come to the voting booths on November 8th, and get involved. You know, I agree with it because for a long time everybody thought that somebody else was going to do the job, and we've just been locked in gridlock here. And look, I don't care who the mayor is, and I don't care who the council is. You don't do what's been done to the residents in the city over a protracted period of time and put us in debt and jeopardy like we are. No, I don't think that the Commonwealth should come here and run the city. And I really think that we should be allowed to fire the PEL without sanctions. Okay, I think that we need to give the residents of this city a chance to clean government up. I think what the one thing that would really help this city, and I sincerely mean it, is remove politics from the elective process and pick 5 independent people and put them on council that are willing to work together. I think we've had one team, like the last election, I said, we've had one team in council for the mayor, and then we have a team against the mayor, and what we've done in this city is we've had one team against another for decades. And all we've done is lock ourselves in gridlock, and there's been no movement. We need 5 independent council people that want to go out in the community, hear what the people have to say, and actually make their life better. Now, we've listened to people talk about renters ordinances. Look, there's blight in this city because there's no jobs in this city. We played political shenanigans for decades, and people have just left. They're tired of it, okay? The people have no more money to give, and I mean that, and we have to try a new course, and that's what I think we should do.
Thank you. We're going to now turn to public safety. What threats do you see to public safety in the city, and what proposals, if any, can you offer to enhance public safety in the city over the next 4 years? And again, I'll warn you, I will not cut public safety personnel without an explanation isn't a good enough answer. And so we're looking for some real content in your answer. So again, the question is, what threats do you see to public safety, if any, and what proposals would you have to offer to enhance public safety in the city over the next 4 years? And this question is going to start with Bob.
I think that's a difficult question. Right now, I believe that the public safety, that the police and fire in this city do a great job. The obvious threat to that is the ability to pay them. As we move forward, and especially given what has happened with the Supreme Court decision, is can we afford to pay for the services that we have been receiving? That's the major threat. And it all comes back to, I think it all comes back to working together to produce a budget that can keep firemen working, that can keep policemen working. I think there are some things that we can look at. I think that it's going to take a cooperation between the unions and the administration and the city of Scranton in order to keep people working. Perhaps some creative financing in order to take care of the cost of public safety. Perhaps things like salary caps, rather than talking about numbers. Maybe what we need to look at is a cap on salaries for police and firemen, and allow the unions in the city to work within that cap to put people on the job. But I think it is a problem going forward, but I think it's an economic problem and not a physical problem, not one. I think it's a problem that we need to take care of, because I think the police and fire do a great job. We just have to allow them to continue to do that job.
Thank you. Lee?
Well, on public safety, it may not be popular, but I think we need to ask the residents to consider a fee per household for, like the garbage fee. I think that we should ask the residents what they think of that. Because in my own opinion, we're 26 square miles in the city. We have a lot of old homes in the city. I think that people should have fire and police protection, but to be honest with you, the city's $500 million plus in debt, and we're just borrowing money, so we can't create money out of the air. So maybe to be $10 fee per house, so that we could man all our fire stations and have an adequate police protection. Because to be real honest with you, we don't need to end up like Wilkes-Barre, and we've got a lot to save here. But I think everybody's going to have to contribute a little bit if they can. And I'm sure there's some people in the community that can't come up with $10. And I just think that maybe we have to come up with some creative ways to raise revenue, whether it's a festival in the summer or some way to start creating a revenue stream, which may not be a lot of money, but we need to start somewhere. And we can't afford any more firemen's cuts or any more police cuts. We can't have public safety policemen running from one side of the city to the other, undermanned, because how would you like to get out of a police car in the dark and try to catch somebody and you don't even know how many people are there? I mean, we're understaffed and we're taking a terrible chance on losing very valuable people. And I just like to say, would you send our military into a situation where they didn't have the tools and weapons they needed to do their job? And I honestly, and the residents of the city may not appreciate this, but look, we need fire and police protection here. And we have to find a way to fund it. And to be bluntly honest with you, the city doesn't have the money, and we just can't keep borrowing. So I just think that maybe we should come up and ask for a fee per household, a small one, and maybe some salary cuts. And I just think we have to work together on that. We have to try something new.
Thank you. Jack?
Public safety is in great jeopardy here in the city. Your public safety. With the cutbacks that we've had so far, I cannot even fathom losing one more member of the police or fire department at this time. I don't feel safe as it is. I'm in an area where there is no water for, no fire hydrants or anything. And just this past Sunday, our only firehouse in that location was closed. The closest one was out in North Scranton. I mean, this is what we pay our tax dollars for. I can't see charging an extra fee Those are the basic things you pay your tax dollars for: police and fire protection, garbage pickup. I had nothing to do with the garbage fee, which I think is crazy anyway. But the public services, through the years, have not caused this problem. At one time, there were 246 firefighters. Today, there's 130, and he wants to bring it down to 100. The size of the city hasn't shrunk. The size of the city is still the same, but we have structures farther apart and older structures. The same with the police. We've got a lot more crime going on, a lot more problems. And they're running in police cars that are falling apart. The fire and police both have made major concessions through the years. 50-minute one time a few years ago under this Distressed Act, and it was supposed to help save the city. Yet we're farther behind now. We can't blame the public safety unions right now for this major settlement. They didn't receive a pay increase in 10 years. They would have resolved it for less than half of that, as was evidenced, and the administration continued to fight it and arbitrate it. That's why we're in a position we're in now. But we have to get some innovative ideas, bring some revenue in. We could bring the ambulance service back and towing into the police department to generate some more revenue, and those are just some ideas. I know they're willing to do more service for what they're there for, and they're willing to work with the city.
Thank you. Bob, did you want a rebuttal?
Please.
Yes.
One thing that I was reminded of, and the University of Scranton may not want to hear, but one thing that I think that we should do is look at a public safety fee for nonprofit organizations. It's been mentioned in the past, and I know that it's been fought in some areas, it's been successful in some areas. But the city provides public safety services to all of the nonprofit organizations in this city, and yet those organizations do not pay taxes for that service. I think that some type of fee, be it a per person fee or some type of fee that would cover public safety for these institutions like the University of Scranton would increase the revenue and also would keep more public safety people working.
Thank you.
Can I jump in here?
Yes. So this is your second rebuttal as well.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Look, we have a fee for garbage. It's real simple. It's public health and safety. You know, having a fee for fire and police protection may be an uncomfortable thing for some people, but it's necessary if we're going to preserve our fire and police protection, if we want to feel safe in our homes. Okay, as far as the city ambulance, I think there should be a city ambulance, but I also think that we've privatized it out and a lot of people are making the profit off it. And when we have a city ambulance, it should be staffed by a nurse practitioner or a paramedic, not an EMT, so that when they come to your house, they can render aid to you instead of just transport you to a hospital and hope for the best. Okay, we have to want the best we can get. When an ambulance comes, it has to be able to render care to you. You're not calling a taxi, okay? And I just think that the solutions are out there. But none of these are going to be pleasant because in all reality, this city's out of money, has an inability to borrow money, its bond rating is declining, and our residents are fleeing as fast as they can, and we just have to figure a way to stabilize ourselves and turn things around.
Thank you. Next question deals with labor and management relations. What can you say as a council member, as a council member do to ensure that both management and labor bargain in good faith as required by law and work to address conflicts over contract interpretations so that the city avoids arbitration? We're going to start with Lee.
I'm going to be real honest with you and tell you that I don't think there's any way to avoid arbitration if a union wants to go to it. The other thing is I think that it all comes down to mutual respect. I've been a Teamster before. I've settled union contracts where I worked off the floor as a regular employee over the local and over the shop steward. And I just think that we have to respect people who work for us. We have to give them information so that they know that we're not hiding anything from them and that we're their partner. And the other thing is we've got to stop playing politics. Okay, we played politics with the city unions for a long time and they played politics back. And I think it's done nothing but hurt us. And I think the best thing to do is show mutual respect to all parties, try to be an open mind as you can, and share as much information as you can. because really we've got to learn to work together to turn the city around, because the employees in the city have a dog in this fight. They have a job, and I think a lot of them really love their work and want to work for the city. And I just think that they'd like to because I've talked to some, and they'd like to put the politics aside and come to work. And they'd want everybody to lay the politics down. Because you don't want to know, our employees, I think they love our city just as much as we do. They're no different than anybody else who goes to work every day. They want a day's pay for a day's work. And I just think that acknowledging that and respecting them will give back mutual respect. And we'll start working together, because unless we're a team, we're going to have the same thing that we've always had here, gridlock and an inability to work together. And it's cost us a lot of money this time. We fought a lot of fights in the courts, cost us millions and millions of dollars. We're going to have absolutely nothing to show for it, and we will have accomplished nothing.
Thank you. Jack?
I would have to agree with Lee. Mutual respect and open line of communication are the major factors when they're sitting across the table from each other. We can't make an agreement and walk away from the table and turn the agreement away, which has been done. And that's part of why we're in this position. You know, like Mr. Morgan said, these employees, they have to live in the city. They're taxpayers here. They have a vested interest in what goes on here. They're worried about their safety too. And you know, we're all in it together. They realize that. And it's just a matter of, again, taking the politics out. Definitely. It's easy to say, but sometimes when it comes down, when they're fighting not for their jobs, but for your safety, I don't think that's political, you know. We have to get people sitting there at the negotiation table on the other side that understands what this side's job is. Not someone that sits behind a desk with a pencil and says we could close this place, that place, shut this down, and with no plan, professional plan or anything. There has to be a mutual understanding and some knowledge of each other's positions. And that's pretty much what I have to say.
Thank you. Bob?
Yeah, we seem to view the collective bargaining process only in the terms of the public safety unions. And that 10-year process that we've now gone through was really a product of some ambiguity in the law. And my belief is that both sides, the unions and the administration and Pell and DCED, whoever you put into that equation, wanted to resolve that ambiguity, and they were not going to settle until the courts made a decision. Well, the courts have made a decision. Somewhat have made a decision. And some of the ambiguity has been, there's some clarity in how, so it puts the collective bargaining, you know, back in the picture for the public safety unions. But we also have to realize that there are other unions that exist in the city. Clerical union, DPW, and they have gone through the collective bargaining process. They have settled contracts, so it works. And hopefully, with this court decision, and maybe relieving some of the ambiguity that existed, and perhaps moving us towards out of distress status, that now the public safety unions and the administration will sit down and go through the process, the legal, the collective bargaining process that does exist. Hopefully that will occur. I don't think there's anything you can do to guarantee it, but there's always, you know, that rational people will prevail and that the process will work.
Thank you. We're going to talk a little bit about government transparency and the media. In our democracy, government is expected to be transparent, function out in the open. In addition, the media is expected to present news as well as act as a watchdog over government for the people. Therefore, there's a public perception that government officials have an obligation to talk with the media. The question is, and we'll start with Jack, how do you feel about that obligation?
Transparency is totally what we believe in. As far as talking to the media, sometimes it depends on the form of media. I guess it's no secret that I no longer respond to the Scranton newspaper, Scranton Times, basically because, you know, it's easy to twist and distort what I comment on. Transparency at the council meetings, I'm live, everything I say is right there. That's what I like. I'd love to be in a public forum like this. But when you're let to a reporter that can put whatever he wants on that print, it's not always accurate. Unfortunately, it hasn't been accurate. And, you know, so I've sort of stopped talking to the Times, and they could speak to me live at a meeting if they want. They could ask me questions here if they'd like. I believe in transparency totally. I want you to hear what I'm saying word for word, not a soundbite in a newspaper that may distort what the bottom line is of what I had to say. So if you see that I didn't respond in the newspaper, that's pretty much it. Live media like this, it's not easy to distort unless it's edited. But we haven't found that. So that, I mean, as far as transparency, I'm all for it, but there's a certain limitation when it comes to the printed media.
Thank you. Bob?
I believe that all elected officials have an obligation to speak to the public. And obviously, the media is the best way in which to do that. Be it newspapers, be it television, be it radio, be it internet, blogs, whatever the case may be. And I believe that the media then has an obligation to report what has been said and what has taken place. It's been my experience that, yes, all media can be somewhat ambiguous in what they do. Perhaps they don't hear things properly. I've had questions for some of the reporters from the Times, but I've dealt with them as they've occurred. I've had some issues with some radio personalities. Deal with them as they occur. But I think by turning off to the media, what you've done is that you've taken a voice away. And while we should want to have what we say and what we do reported to the public. And I think that we should use all forms of media. And when problems occur, deal with them individually. Deal with them and not as a policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee?
Well, look, I've been out here in the community for a long time, at council meetings over 20 years. Scranton Times has my phone number. Lackawanna has my phone number. They call me anytime. I answer their questions. And I just think that in government, people elected, and maybe even sometimes people that are in the community doing whatever they do, have an obligation to just be there and answer questions. I don't think any elected official should shirk a question. You know, I agree with what some of Mr. McGough said. You know, sometimes they don't report it just the way you think you said it. But I think the most important thing is to allow all the residents where you live the ability to understand where you stand on issues. Now, we're going to talk about transparency. You know, there's been a real problem with this council as far as communication with the media. Well, you can blame the Scranton Times for what's going on, but initially they were communicating by email, from what I understand, or written statements, and then just stopped talking. And I just think that when you're elected, look it, you're going to take some shots. I remember when Mr. Pochus was on council. And look it, I have a lot of respect for Mr. Pochus, regardless of his politics. But he said, I asked to be here, and whatever happens is going to happen. But I'm going to say what I think, and people may not report it exactly the way I said it, but I asked to be here. And I just think that when we have a government that won't speak to us through the media, we have no idea what's going on. And when we start talking about transparency, Channel 19 hasn't been funded this year. Okay, they're in jeopardy of collapse here. Okay, so we can't talk like we want to be transparent. Okay, and all the backup to everything that comes through council is not on council's webpage. It's not on their site. And if they want the public informed when they vote on something, everything should be there, because I think every resident has a right to know what's going on in their government.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll give Jack a rebuttal. This is your second.
As far as the backup on the website, I believe that was explained at several council meetings. It is not council's fault that it's not there. It's the IT department stresses there's not enough memory to put our backup on the website. At this point, I would love to see it on there. Everyone would. And Mr. McGough, all of us have agreed. But it's the internet department that handles that, and they said they don't have the ability at this time, based on the memory of the server, to put that out there. Anyone can stop by City Council chambers the day before the meeting and pick up a copy. It's wide open. And as far as transparency, anyone can get me on the internet through the city website, or you could call City Council office 3484113 and leave your name and number, or they'll give you my number and I'll get back to you. I'm available out in the street, any store, wherever you want. I don't have to go through the newspaper. There is a newspaper that is favorable.
Thank you. I'm going to stick with media for a bit here and ask more specifically about the ECTV. ECTV plays an important role in our community by broadcasting government meetings as well as candidate debates like this one. What should council's role be in assuring adequate funding for public access television? And this question begins with Mr. McGough.
A number of years ago, there was the TV cameras were removed from council chambers, and a vote was taken to put them back. And I voted to put them back into council chambers because I feel that it's a necessary part of the process. A lot of people don't have the opportunity to go to council meetings, maybe don't have a newspaper or whatever available to them, but can turn on to ECTV and see council meetings, see taxpayer association meetings, see whatever is being broadcast. And so I think because of that, I think all of government, all of the various areas of government have an obligation to keep those channels open and to keep ECTV or whoever the provider is working. Whether it's through the budget, placing an item in the budget, whether it's through providing grant money, but I do think that governments, the county government, school district, city, all have a responsibility to do something to make sure that ECTV stays on the air.
Thank you. Lee?
Yes, you know, I really honestly believe that ECTV is probably the greatest asset that we have at this time. It shows meetings. A lot of times they're live. We get to see how our legislators work. Their ability should be enhanced, to be quite honest with you. I know if I was elected, all right, I'd like to see them go to low power FM. I'd like them to be able to leave 19 and have a much broader audience. I think they should cover every meeting. And I really think it does the greatest service to the community to see what their elected officials do everywhere. Because, you know, even at this point, if you don't have cable TV, you can go to the Scranton Public Library and pick up the disc and play it and know what's going on in your government. There's no excuse not to know what's happening in this city. And I think that when they allowed ECTV to come in and record the meetings, I think it was the greatest thing that ever happened to the city. I really do. I think it brought it right up front and center. Now look, I've knocked on a lot of doors. A lot of people think that the council meetings are out of control. A lot of people disagree with what the councilmen are doing. But you know what? It's not happening in a corner somewhere where nobody knows what's going on. And if they want to make a change, they can do it on election day. All right? But I mean, they can see how people vote on issues, whether it's the Scranton-Abington Planning Association's plan, whether it's privatization of the Scranton Sewer Authority. You know, no matter what it is, we can see where our legislators stand, what they're saying on the votes that are coming up, what command that they have on the agenda, what they understand and what they don't understand. It's just a great thing, and I really think that we need to find money to fund them, and this is one thing that I don't think that we should jeopardize and lose. And I just don't think that they've been funded properly. And like I said, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Jack?
Well, live coverage of these debates and all the municipal meetings is one of the greatest assets the voters and the taxpayers of this community can have to see what goes on here on a daily basis. It gives you, you know, the real live interaction with the people that are in charge. And, you know, there's several issues. We've had complaints on different issues. I don't know who the operators are of ECTV. I don't care if it was Acme TV that was here. I do believe we have to have someone in their position doing these programs. Again, it's accountability. I recall City Council requesting information. We've had some complaints on different issues, but information as far as a contract that I don't believe was ever provided. And that's all we requested. And then we requested perhaps a new RFP, then they could get back to square one. I mean, it's all about legality and doing the right thing. And, you know, transparency. If there's a contract and the amount was spelled out in the contract, I'd be the first one to sign that check. And that's all it's all about. It's been taken away in a lot of different issues, a lot of different stories, but that's my understanding at this point. But I do believe every meeting, every municipal meeting, school board, county meetings, planning commissions, and of course city council meetings should be broadcast so the public can see, you know, what their elected officials do for them. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is about City Council's agenda. What is one issue or problem that has not already been discussed this evening that you feel should be on City Council's agenda in the next year or two? Please explain why this issue or problem should be on the agenda and what specific action or actions related to the problem you would propose. And we're going to start this question with Mr. Morgan.
Well, the first thing I have here is, you know, it came up about the city's website. Well, I went to the coordinator of the website to ask them why the backup to the agenda wasn't there. They just don't want to put it there. The space is there. I talked to the gentleman who runs it. There was another person with me at the time. The space is there to put it there. I think the most important thing we could do for this city is to put everything that comes before council on the agenda with all its backup on the city's website. And there's a reason for that. If you're a resident and you want to know what's happened at a certain time, you go on your computer, you ask for the document, you print it, it's free. You're not going down to the council clerk and asking for it. You know that when your council people are voting on issues, they have all the information. In my own opinion, after all the time I've spent there, over 20 years, I know there's many, many instances where they say we're voting but we don't have the information. Well, when you vote on something and you don't have the information, that's an error. And I think that's what's brought us to where we are. We've been very careless in the way council's functioned for decades. And now it's finally come to the point where, you know, look, people don't leave an area unless they feel hopeless. And that's the thing I'm seeing when I'm knocking on people's doors. They're trying to figure out how they're going to get out of here because they can't take any more property increases. We have blight in all our neighborhoods, okay, and no solutions. And we're talking about renters being the problem. And you know what? I just think that a great thing we could do is have a council that only voted when they had all the information to anything on the agenda. And the way we know that is if it's on the city website and it's all there so you can see it, so that you know that your legislators are informed voting, and you can call them before the vote and tell them whether you agree or disagree. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. What is one issue or problem that has not already been discussed this evening that you feel should be on council's agenda in the next year or two? So please explain the issue or the problem that should be on the agenda and what specific action you would propose.
Well, it's really hard to pick something that hasn't been discussed. I think we pretty much covered the realm. You know, I think, I mean, I know it's been discussed or mentioned, but blight is a big issue. And as I've gone around door to door, I think just about every block I've found a property that was a problem property. And again, working with Mr. McGough on the rental registration ordinance, we see a lot of the problems. There's a lot of out-of-town landlords that buy properties and throw people in them without even doing any renovations. These regulations are going to give us the opportunity to perform inspections, follow up on complaints, and close problem properties. And the state, over the past couple of years, have come up with some conservatorship laws, too, that would give us some more ammunition as far as seizing properties and stuff like that. And we're not looking to do something like that, but we have to clean up our neighborhoods. One deteriorating property starts the whole block going. Again, a big problem is out-of-town landlords, but you can't discriminate. We have good in-town landlords, too. And everyone has to be treated fairly. But if you take care of your property, through these ordinances and legislation, inspections, pertinent fines, and different things like that, that's going to be a big improvement in this city. That's going to start making people feel more favorable about their neighborhood and their city. And I think that's one of the big issues that we have to face. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
I'm going to mention two things that I think should be on council's agenda. One immediate and one for the future. There has been a refusal to place the mayor's proposals for dealing with the deficit on our agenda. I think we have all been, the city has elected 5 council people to decide what will pass and what will not. And right now that decision is being made by one person. I think those items need to be placed on the agenda so that whether we vote for them or against them, or whether they're even tabled, but they should be on the agenda, and we should have an opportunity to do our duty as elected officials to vote on those items. The second issue, and I think I'm stealing from Mr. Morgan, I think one of the big mistakes the council made in the past was defeating SAPA. I think it was a program that was needed. I think it was something that should have been considered. I think it was a step toward doing something beneficial to encourage industry and to encourage business in the city. It wasn't a panacea, but it was something that possibly could have worked. And I would like to see that plan be represented to council in 2012 so that it can be voted upon, so that hopefully it can be enacted and implemented to the benefit of the city of Scranton and to the members of the SAPA community.
Thank you. Yes. Last rebuttal.
Just a couple of quick things. Mr. Morgan mentioned the IT department. It wasn't council that refused to put them on, it was the IT department. Is that correct? Mr. Morgan?
We're going to ask the questions, okay? So I don't want to get it started back and forth.
Well, I just want to make a correction.
Okay.
I mean, city
Thank
council
you.
authorized the IT department to put the backup on the thing. I just wanted to clarify it. Also, as far as SAPA goes, SAPA is a piece of paper like this here that says any industry, because of zoning, wouldn't be allowed up in the Abington area. You know, that's all it is. If I told you, go down to Tom Hesser and buy a Chevrolet, and you found a Chevrolet in Dixon City cheaper, that's where you would go. And that's exactly what it is. There's no guarantee until our taxes for businesses are on an equal basis with either side. So it's not going to benefit us until we get to that point. That's why I'm not in favor of it at this point. Thank you.
May I use my rebuttal?
Yes, this is your last
my
rebuttal.
last one. Now, I brought this with me today. It's the SAPA plan. It's a document. I've read it from one side to the other. It's only a benefit for this city and Dunmore. It lays on the back of the Clean and Green program that the state government put forward to stop sprawl into the rural areas. There's not one negative thing in this document, not one. I've talked to Mr. King about it. I've talked to all the members of SAPA about it. I was pretty critical of it when it went to the Scranton School District down in their auditorium. As a matter of fact, the people who presented it wanted to kill me at the meeting because I was asking questions. Okay, I've got all the maps, all the grids. There is not one person in this community that knows this better than me because I have a copy of it, and I've read it. This has great promise for this city, and this is the way back, because in order to save this city, we have to raise revenue, we have to create jobs, and we have to give people opportunity. Okay? And I think this council was wrong. And it'll cost $30,000, and the community can back out anytime they want. And my point is, aren't we, the Scrantonians, worth $30,000?
Thank you. Mr. McGuff, did you want to get in on this?
No, that's
Okay.
fine.
We have one more rebuttal, so. This is the last question before closing statements, so you may feel a little relief hearing that. What is one, and this is a question about a promise you're going to make to the city. What is one accomplishment you promise to work to achieve in your term of office, if elected or re-elected? And tell us how the citizens of Scranton will be able to measure your success that you've achieved this accomplishment. So what is the one main accomplishment you want to make in your term of office, and how will the citizens be able to measure your success? And we're going to start this with Jack.
Thank you. I have a lot of ideas, but probably one accomplishment based on what's happening now is to try and work with the public safety unions over this next year and try and reduce the hit on the Scrantonians. This was a major decision, and they realize that, and they're willing to come to the table and try and help the people in the city to offset major tax increases and a bigger deficit. They didn't know when this decision would come up. It could have come up 4 more years from now. Could have came up 2 years ago. But and no one knew what the final impact would be. And we're still waiting to see the final impact. We haven't received all the final numbers. But one of the things I do, and I know because I have worked with many of these fine ladies and gentlemen, that they are willing to work with us. They were willing to work with us through this whole process, and people walked away from the table. But my success this year will be gauged on my ability, and I put my word on it, my ability to work with the unions and come up with a fair and equitable situation that lessens the impact on the everyday person in this city, and helps us in the long run, whether it's protracted payments or reductions or whatever. But I'm sure they even expressed at the last council meeting their willingness to sit down with us, since the mayor refused to sit with them and discuss it with us. And that's what I look forward to this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
I think central to all of the problems that exist in the city of Scranton has been the inability of the administration and council to work together. For the last 2 years, we've been a government at war with itself. We have agreed on very little. And I think that if Scranton's going to survive into the future, it's going to need someone that can work to bring the administration and the council at least to a working relationship. It doesn't have to be a cooperative one. It just has to be one where government is working towards the benefit, the mutual benefit of the city of Scranton. I have attempted to do that over the past number of years. Some of my efforts may be minimal in results, but I don't think it's something that you can quantify and take a look at and say, okay, here are the numbers. It's been successful. But if reelected, I will continue to make attempts to get council and the administration to work towards what is the best resolution of issues, what's best for the city of Scranton, and not what's best for one party or the other. And I think that's where we have been. And we need to move from that and to move toward some type of system that's functional, rather than the dysfunctional system that has created, as Mr. Morgan refers to, a gridlock. I say stagnation. I promise, That has been my promise all along, to try and build some consensus between the administration and council, and to create a functioning government once again.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan?
Could I ask you to repeat the question, please?
Yep. What is one accomplishment you promise to work to achieve in your term in office, and tell us how the citizens of Scranton will be able to measure your success on this promise?
Well, to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons why I'm in this race. What I'd like to do is, I'd like to do what I do now. I'd like to go out in the neighborhoods, knock on people's doors, talk to them, invite them into the process, find out what the people in Scranton really think. I really think people are all that matters. I think politics, Democrats and Republicans, is meaningless. Okay, I think that we have to invite people in, have people start coming to council meetings, feel that the council is listening to them, move agendas and programs through council which benefit the people of this city. And I think that they'll know that I'm doing it and I am successful because I will be knocking on their doors in neighborhoods, because I don't think you can represent anybody by showing up at a council meeting once a week without continually going back into the community, engaging their needs and working to meet them. And it's going to be a long, hard struggle. And I'm not telling you it's going to be easy, but we have to start somewhere, because in my opinion, look, I grew up here, maybe I'm a little deceived, but I think this is a beautiful place to live, and I have a lot of childhood memories of this city that I'd like to see return if they could in some ways. And I'd like Scranton to become a progressive city, like we were at one time, a long time ago. And I'd like to see families stay here, and when your children grow up, have them stay here too and find work here. And I think the only way we're going to do it, to be honest with you, is everybody has to work together. Everybody has to do a little bit, and we can get it done. So that's how I know I'll be successful.
Thank you. We're now going to go to closing statements.
Can I use my last rebuttal?
Yes. Your last
I
rebuttal.
saved it.
Go ahead.
One of the other things that I think that we have to look at for the future, and I think anyone who is elected, it is to move Scranton out of distressed city status. Now that the Supreme Court has ruled on Act 47, perhaps we can start moving towards that goal. I don't know if it's going to happen in the next year, next 4 years. I don't know if you can measure, what any one person has done to move that, to move us out of distressed status. But I think what we need to do is to use all of the resources that we have in the city, be it Pell, be it DCED, be it the council, be it the mayor, whatever, to use all of the resources that we have and move Scranton forward and out of the status that we now have.
Thank you. So now we'll move to closing statements. Each candidate will have just 1 minute for a closing statement, and we're going to start this with Bob McGough.
My closing statement is simple. I would just like to thank the League of Women Voters for conducting this debate, and Dr. Harris for acting as moderator. I'd like to thank the University of Scranton for hosting the event. It's a great theater in which to do that. I'd like to also thank ECTV for taping and broadcasting this debate so that others may see it who were unable to attend. And lastly, I'd like to thank the electorate, the voters of the city of Scranton, for making wise decisions and for placing me in office, and hopefully for re-electing me to this office. Thank you.
People want to applaud now, you can. I forgot to ask people to hold their applause, but you were so good about it. Thank you. Mr. Morgan.
It's my turn. Well, my closing statement is really simple. I'd like to ask all the Scrantonians who have given up on the process to take one more chance and come back into the polls and give me their vote in November. I think that we can all work together to change this city. I think we have to make a lot of changes. I think we can't do it alone. I think it's time to stop vilifying other parties who you don't agree with their opinions. I think that if we can't come together and solve our problems, we're going to keep wandering the same way we've been for a long time. I think the city is a beautiful city. I think it's got its marks and its issues, but I think we can turn it around if we all work together. And I just hope that you come back and start participating in council meetings, start participating in government, start knowing your neighbors, form neighborhood associations, start pushing an agenda of renewal in this city. Working people built the city, and working people have to realize it's time to come back and get involved.
Thank you. Mr. Luscombe.
I too would like to thank Dr. Harris, our timers here, our audience, and our TV audience. As a lifelong resident of Scranton, you know, I love this city. My wife was born and raised here. We're married 32 years, and we're the proud grandparents of a grandson yesterday, and I want to see my grandchildren live and grow up here. And I've had 2 years to serve in this office. I would appreciate a full term of 4 years to continue the work that I've been doing. And although me and my contestants sometimes have philosophical differences, we all have your hearts in mind, and I think we're all here for the same reasons. And it's going to be up to you to decide, you know, who to continue doing the job. And I would appreciate that. Thank you.
On behalf of the League of Women Voters and the University of Scranton Political Science Department, which I chair, and the College Democrats and Republicans, I thank the candidates for being here this evening and all of you who are here live listening to this. Remind everybody that you can see this debate on ECTV and on the League's website. There is another debate next week, Wednesday, at 7 o'clock in the Moskowitz Theater, and that will be for the County Commissioner's race. And so we invite you to come back. Or to catch that also on TV. And the last thing I want to do is remind you to vote on November 8th. Thank you very much.